introduce to you all. I'm sure you are no stranger to her work. Having a chance to explore it while you were here, drinking some coffee, saying hello, sharing smiles. But today we're going to get into a little bit of a conversation. Welcome to Art of Noise, where we celebrate, we liberate, and we tell the stories alongside of our artists through the music, through the art here, through our spoken word. Sorry, chords. I'll do my best not to kick over my own card. Okay, I'm going to refill. Okay. There we go. There we go. The dancer means like, put this somewhere. Okay. Okay, it's behind me. Before we get started, I want to introduce myself. My name is Miss Jolie. I'm the curator here at Art of Noise. I've had the pleasure of meeting many artists, sharing this very couch with them, smiling, crying together, all the good stuff, as we formulate what is a beautiful body of work here at Art of Noise. I have with me Red, as I mentioned, and I'm going to share a few words to describe her work, her spirit, how I see her before we get started. One is strength, another is vulnerability, her resilience, beauty, and culture. And last but not least, the title of this exhibition, which is Her. And that's how I kind of sum you up in front of your work. Without further ado, we're going to get started. We're going to talk about everything from, it's about half an hour to about 45 minutes. Sorry, I meant to prep you for if you had to get up and use the restroom. For those of you who have to walk away. We're going to sit here, we're going to chat. It's not going to feel like 30 minutes. We're going to talk about everything from her art, her artistic vision, the evolution of her, why we named it her. I think that's like the mystery. As well as what it means to empower and capture the beauty of Ethiopian women through her work. So, okay, can we do a little bit of that? Okay, we're going to jump right in. If that's okay with you. I always tell people I hope they did their homework when they come to an artist talk, because we're not going to talk about when you were a little girl, right? Although that's a beautiful story to tell, and I'm sure you'll dive into. We're going to get into the work, your vision, and of course your evolution. I think that's where our heart is today, and I would love for those everyone to kind of enjoy that part of it. That's okay. So my first question, again, I have many, but I'll be gentle, I promise. What does the Her exhibition represent for your personal journey, right? Your evolution as an artist, especially concerning the portrayal of women.
Yeah, so when we were getting, I tend to start really strong and then go down with my voice, so try to be conscious about that. But yeah, so as we were getting ready for, first of all, I just want to say thank you for everybody who came here. Maybe I'll prompt you a little, to come out in this cold day, so I appreciate you guys for being here. Last week was Ethiopian Christmas, so my family were like, what's your dress? Did you do anything? So I thought, let me wear an Ethiopian dress, let me make some coffee and feel, I celebrate it. So thank you for sharing the experience of making coffee and sitting around and talking to me about my work. Because a lot of it I wanted to feel like home, basically. So with that said, my work, the exhibition title here, Her and Her Swan. Sorry, it's okay. Her is really a kind of need for me to want to show my body of work, not just specifically about my series that I started photographing these women in 2019. I would go to Ethiopia to photograph them with my film camera. I probably will discuss this later, but shooting film is very close to my heart, and choosing to do so was a huge task. I could have probably had a better experience doing it with my digital camera. But I really wanted to get a voice and really wanted to share the story in a deep way, photographing in black and white, making it really about them, about her. And then as you see the large cyanotypes, they're a series from my self-portrait. So in this sense, I'm also her. I'm also part of the women, for a while I photographed women, and it was sort of separated, and I didn't really sort of maybe understand what it felt like to be asked to be photographed, and then I sort of switched the camera towards myself and start a series photographing myself. So really, when we chose the title for the exhibition, it was a need for me to talk about my bodies of work as opposed to just one series, which last year I had the chance to showcase my work here, but just my modern new series, which is just the women that you see with the platinum print. But I just really wanted to expand and share that not only am I a silver gelatin printer or a platinum printer or a cyanotype printer, but I really just wanted to share a broader work as opposed to just one piece of series. So we just made it kind of not specifically, but just called her and shared my work, which is platinum prints about the Noize, but also the cyanotypes, which is about me. Yeah.
I love that. And again, she's kind of giving you guys hints and bits, and we'll kind of get into some of what you're saying. Because Red and I like to open up. So if you notice, before we get started, this is very different from what you may have experienced, and you may have been at many artist talks where there's round, everyone sitting and staring at each other and blinking. However, we wanted to do something very different, where we wanted the women in the room, as we begin to kind of dive into another chapter of Red and her in particular, is sisterhood. This was brought up many times in our conversation, is how do we create sisterhood? How does that look in an art space? How do you create that on the walls? How do you tell that story in a space? And I said, let's just have women just kind of be in a space and see each other across the room and engage with each other as you talk, right? I don't know if you've ever been to a hair salon, many of us have, but one of the things we do, you will nod, and you don't know half the story. You don't know none of these people in the chapters of the story. But when you look at another young woman sitting across from you, next to you, there's something you do when you nod your head and you feel like you're part of this community. There's something about a sisterhood you create very quickly. So I said, how do we do that with your work? How do we do that here at Art Noize? So if you look, this is all purposeful, and this is Red's idea. And of course, I ran with it all the way down the street and said, let's put these chairs and let's move us. And let's.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit more about your work being, I guess you could say, a nod to sisterhood and what sisterhood means for you when you were photographing these women.
Yeah. So for me, I think I have been, especially in the past few years, been really trying to connect with a place to call home. That's kind of why I sort of packed everything I had and moved to Ethiopia. I grew up in the States and made the bold choice to pack up and go to Ethiopia to photograph the women, live there. It's a long story. I could probably get to it later on, but I quickly realized maybe I shouldn't have committed to living there. There were limitations to developing my film because there was not darkrooms and whatnot in Ethiopia. So when I moved there, though, I really, even before I came up with a reason to photograph these women, I was really hoping to connect with women in Ethiopia, really seeking sisterhood, seeking even advice, really, because I was new to Ethiopia, even though I was Ethiopian. I felt like it didn't feel, like I felt like an outsider. So I went there and I was like, there's a disconnect, even way before I even thought about really starting this series of photographing women. I was like, let me sit and talk to women, and the idea sort of came to me to photograph women and to collect their stories and to really see what they're going through in this day and age. And as a photographer, what I was seeing a lot was women that were being photographed with a digital camera and a lot of post-processing happening. So it just almost removes who she is from her identity. So I really wanted to connect with the truth of who women are and what they're going through in Ethiopia. So I started to do that, having very honest conversations with them in my studio, and then letting them know who I am, and then asking them if I can photograph them. So that journey started for me in 2019. And then I realized I moved to DC 2018, so I was sort of going back and forth, Ethiopia, Chicago, DC, and then realized DC is a place for me to actually expand my work and have the space to develop my film and make the prints that I wanted to. So I settled here and realized again I wanted that community, and I wanted to connect with them and what they're going through. And it's really, I feel like I'm constantly sort of looking for a place to connect and to have like a family kind of relationship with the people around me. So I feel like that's kind of my journey in terms of like what I do as a photographer, but just also finding community and connection. It's become a really important thing for me, probably, I would say, like in the past few years.
Thank you, thank you. Connection is one I want to explore as a lot of us, if you noticed when you were browsing the room and taking in the work, there are some familiar faces, and that's because the connections you have with the women, right? You see one young lady in particular, more than one. She's actually, I think this is her third, right? There are other two in the back. If it's okay, just because this one is here for me and I'm looking at her, part of me wants to hear her story.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, share with me more of, if you can recall that conversation, that moment, any opportunity to not just film her, photograph her once, but 3 times.
Yes.
At different stages of her journey. Can you talk a little bit more about this one in particular?
Yeah, so I think what I was exposed to, maybe I have to go track back and let you know why I sort of decided to photograph these, the women that I photographed was, first, of course, it was to connect with them, to really get to know them and let them share with me what life is like, so I have an understanding while I'm there, but also share their story with me. And then I also realized that a lot of women, or just being in Ethiopia, people sort of go there, photograph, and then just leave and have no connection, ties to the people or the land or anything like that. So I really wanted to continue this relationship with the women. So I knew that I couldn't just take a photograph of her and then just say, okay, bye, and totally disconnect. I really made myself clear that if I photograph you, it's going to be probably for the next 5 years. I'm hoping it's going to be longer. I can get funded or grant or something that can happen, so I can continue to document the same women and share, collect their stories and their images for the next decade or so. So Ripka became the first one that I photographed, and since then, the longest that I photograph. Sometimes the women sort of maybe leave the country, or things come up in life that I can't photograph them, but I've been consistently getting to know Ripka, like any kind of relationship, right? Where like you have to give it time, you have to get it space for people to open up whenever they're ready, right? So I knew that that wasn't going to happen the first year, right? So this image that you see is from 2019, but then there are 2 other images on the back wall there that you'll see from 2020 was a flop for everybody, but 2021 and then 2022. So the first year, it was really about the image. We were getting to know each other. Maybe perhaps there wasn't a lot of depth to our friendship, to our relationship. The second year, there was more openness. She was more expressive about what's going on in her personal life. And the third year that I came to photograph her, and we sort of were talking about the politics and things that happens in Ethiopia. She is from the north, and Mekele, which right now there's civil unrest with that part of the country. So without her, really her parents are from there, but she grew up in Addis. And I've been trying to contact her, wasn't able to. Finally, I got a hold of her after months. I told her, hey, I'm gonna be back and I would love to photograph you. And she responded and we met up, and when I saw her, she lost a lot of weight, just really looked different than a year ago or 2 years ago, and just said, you know, what's going on? And she told me that she was actually in prison for 3 months because of the civil unrest, where her neighbors pointed fingers and said, hey, you know, she's from the northern part. She had really nothing. It was more of if you supported what was going on there, but they sort of kind of picked up at her and said, pointed fingers at her. She was in jail for something that she was completely innocent for, right? Like, she didn't deserve to be in there. Nobody really deserves to be in there, but I got to see just like real horrible things, treatments, and part of her story that really was remarkable for me actually was she said, you know what, it was very evident that she had gone through a very traumatic thing, right? But then she said, you know, yeah, my story was like bad, but you know what, it wasn't as bad as some of the other women that were mothers, that were, you know, they were separated from their children, and couldn't see their children, and you know, so she was trying to sort of minimize the experience that she was through. And this is our story, I think, as women, right? Like, we go through hardships and all kinds of things, but then we always sort of have this, we minimize and say, well, maybe someone else was going through that, but trauma is trauma, right? Like, it doesn't matter whether that other person went through a worse trauma. But so part of my conversation and part of this sort of going there is to deepen my relationship with the people that I photograph, but also how can I create a space of healing and conversation and honesty and depth, you know, so that my images are not just like images of their faces, but really images of their stories, and to make that shareable. Because I think then when we share stories, I think there's power to that. Yeah, I get very like, yeah, as you can tell, maybe because it's not just like photographing. Maybe I do photograph like still lives, and maybe I'm not emotionally like connected. But when you photograph people and collect their stories, then you there's some sort of like emotional reaction that happens with that. So yeah.
Thank you for that. And again, when Red and I, just to share a little history, when we first met, that was one of the conversations we had first, was that I want to be careful. And I kind of gave her this look like, yeah, we're going to be careful. This art and Noize, be happy. And she was like, no. The way in which I tell these stories of the women, I need us to be careful of how it comes out and how the world sees these women, because their stories are important to me. And it took me like some sitting down, learning more of Red's culture and looking at the photo. I think I kind of looked through your work so many times and was like, I think I see it. I mean, I get it because, you know, I'm over here and I got my own stuff as a Black woman. I was like, but I think I see it. I think she wants me to see it, and I see it. And for that, we were careful. So thank you for that story. And I know purposely I try not to ask Red so many questions before our conversation. I want to be just as shocked as you are, Niecy. I want to be equally as nodding my head and shaking my head and shedding a tear. I like to be surprised a lot, by the way. I want the artist to surprise me. Can you tell us a little bit? Yeah, we might all hug at the end of this, and that may work for us. We may need that hug. I want you to talk to me about your process, because I think a part of, if everyone can just scan for a moment the room one more time, every woman, the way in Red in which he captures them, there's something different. Even the same picture of one woman, she looks so different, and there's a different story she's now telling in another frame. I think for this show, we actually put them side by side for the most part, for that very reason. You know, when she shared the story here, it's like, okay, you can see the difference in how she looked 2 years ago, 1 year ago, Red got, you saw months ago, that kind of thing. So talk about your process a little bit more, and then if it's okay, talk about the difference in you capturing yourself and choosing larger prints for us to see the motion, the emotion that you have in your frame.
Yeah. So, you know, as much as I love to tell the stories and love to capture the stories through my photograph, really, I am a photographer and I'm a printer, you know. That's how I express my art. I'm not a journalist, so I try to be honest to myself in my process. So even with curating this work, this exhibit, I really was like, can we share about my process? Can we talk about the hours that I spent in the dark room? Because it's also important to me to have an understanding and a connection to that. I spent a lot of time making these work, and really before you ever saw them, these work really started in my head. Probably the platinum prints probably started like 10 years ago. All in my head, right? The cyanotype large print. I'm going to give it up to Josh back there, who helped me to make digital negatives to bring these cyanotypes to life, right? So let's just track back and say that, like, I got introduced to platinum printing, which you see the black and white images maybe 15 years ago or so, and I've been looking to learn this process because they render the tonality that I wanted in terms of portraits, in terms of when you look at the skin of the sitters, it just makes it just pops, and I just really love the look. And so it took me a very long time to find a way to learn this process. So for me, it really starts from like the idea, right? Even I go from like painting my own backdrop, from sketching the look that I want before I even went to Ethiopia to photograph the women. I had an idea of what the look that I wanted, a diverse look of women, not just a certain type of women. So, you know, I kind of had an idea of who I wanted to photograph. This was all done on a sketchbook, a lot of writing, a lot of researching, going to Ethiopia, and not knowing anybody really when I went there. I didn't know any of these women, and they were kind enough to allow me to photograph them, allow me to talk to them, explain my process, who I am, and started that relationship with them. And then also just traveling with film and going to Ethiopia and then bringing that. It's very stressful. But I do all of that because I feel like, I guess first I just didn't see women like me being photographed in this process that I really, really enjoyed. So I was like, well, there's a gap. I just need to do it. I don't need to wait for anybody else to do it. And I think sometimes we can tell our stories better if it's especially something that could come from, from us. So I sort of started the journey there. I was able to find a space in Glen Echo called Photoworks. It's a dark room where I was able to produce these platinum prints. Platinum for me, it's like I said, we can get into depth of how you do that, but just with an understanding that it's an emulsion that you paint on the paper and then you make an exposure with a negative, and then it produces these images that are archival and in tonality, the best type of tonality that you can get when you photograph and print. So with the cyanotype, I've always also just wanted to scale big, and I would have loved to make platinum prints that were that large, but very expensive to do so. So I've been thinking about including myself in a series. So the blue cyanotypes that you see are called, it's from my Phoenix series. They are an image, cascading image of like 7 prints. Was able to make 6 because of the budget, but they're essentially just cyanotype prints that were made by hand, again, painted the emulsion that there's two ways that you can make this cyanotype, which is one that you could make your own solution by mixing the different chemicals, another one that you can mix probably that A and B type that you can get from Amazon or a photo store. But I sort of chose to do it the hard way. If you know me, that's kind of like the only way. And just really loved how they came out, and the vulnerability to share my own body in this series was also a challenge, but something I'm glad that I did. So yeah, I don't know if I answered all the questions, but I get really into that too, because I think sharing my process, I also have, like I said last year, we showed a work that was my silver gelatin print. So a lot of my work is done in the dark room or around the dark room with light sensitive emulsions, basically. So making these handmade prints is very important to me. I love the process of it. I like the length of it. I like sort of taking the time from shooting and then bringing the films and seeing the films come out and then seeing the print come out. All of that is part of the process that I really enjoy. It's a lot of time. It's much easier to just hit print and get it. Though I do have to say, hitting print is also a very valuable thing, so I don't want to discount that at all. But yes, I love all of this process that takes, and that takes a long time. Yeah.
Thank you for that. If it's okay, at times I will look at you, and it's not because I'm being creepy, I promise you. It's because this space is meant to be communal. So as a question comes up, in the past we've had folks kind of go around and there's a microphone. But if you will, if you feel so inclined, please ask a question. My questions are minimal because let's just say Red is touching on everything I have here. She saw these questions ahead of time, by the way. However, if anything jumps out to you in your heart, in your mind, you don't understand this process again. Why so long, right? Are you by yourself? All the questions you may have, please do not hesitate to ask her. I actually was thinking, and I was like, I wonder what music she's playing there. Because the artists talk all the time about their playlists and their musical journey along with their artistic journey. So that was going to be one of my questions, just for fun. Okay. But of course, if anything comes out to you, please, 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 we welcome your voice in this space. Again, think of this as sisters just talking about art, and it just happened to be that we got an artist and some brothers, sorry about that, who are just talking about the featured artist of this month, right? Think of it that way. So of course I have to ask, what keeps you going back to the dark room, right? And what do you do when you pause, when you have to take a break? The process is long.
Yeah.
All of us are not very patient.
Right.
Not at all.
Yeah.
But for you, what keeps you coming back? When do you stop? When does it get hard for you? You said you love it.
I do.
But I'm sure with love and with loving the women in which you capture, there is moments where you have to take a moment.
Yeah.
And do it all over again, right?
Yeah.
Even for your own pieces. So if you can have a moment to talk about that, I guess the triumph of the process.
Yeah.
When does it get real for you?
So, for me, I really enjoy, like I said, the dark room. It's a place that I really get lost. I don't look at my watch, and also I forget to eat sometimes in there. It's really a place that I get lost in, and usually I have to leave if I have if I'm consistently making bad prints, then it's kind of like me telling okay girl, you're done. You can not work on this print any longer, it's time to go. So that's kind of how I know when to leave. But as of late, we have sort of built a community in the dark room. Usually I work by myself. I was the artist in residence at PhotoWorks, so there was a lot of alone time. But then even within the residency, I said to myself, I want to bring other people into this space to work alongside of me. And I really did also enjoy that. And they are artists that are maybe doing something completely different, but they're the masters of their craft. So that's been enjoyable, but also a community of alternative printers that really enjoy doing this thing. So that became like meeting weekly and building a community around me. I do have to say, yeah, to focus, I do need to be alone making my print, but then also I feel like I found the sort of strength and sort of bringing the right people around me to do this. But really, I enjoy the dark room. It's not a place that I get tired of or anything like that. Usually, like I said, if prints are not coming out or just really messing up in there, then I'm just tired and I need to like quit.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Is there any questions coming up? I know I have one. Yes.
The way you painted the emulsion,
Yes.
it reminds me in some of them of a piece of fabric that's fraying.
Mm.
Is that something that you've considered as an added layer conceptually to the work?
It's so funny that you say this, like, because yes, actually, I wanted to originally make these prints on fabric, but the emulsion is very it's temperamental. Also, when you make the digital negative, you have to build a curve. I mean, this is kind of getting nerdy a little bit, but to where it fits the paper and the emulsion have to work well together. So I tried it on fabric, and I really needed more. This was the work that I needed to get done for my residency show. So I sort of needed more time if I was going to do it with fabric. So this is something I'm experimenting on right now, actually, as we speak. I'm in the process of also making a handmade book that would include these fabrics. And it's so really interesting that you say this fraying of the fabric, because I'm really working with that in mind. But I really enjoy these brush strokes that you speak, and it's something that I sort of discovered where I didn't want these perfect lines to, be prominent on my prints, but to sort of leave these brush strokes and make it more painterly. So it's a great question. Thank you.
Hi. Welcome.
Welcome.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, sure. I'm meeting with her every week in photo work, so
Yes,
it's a pleasure.
part of our alternative printing group. Thanks for coming.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting me.
Of course. Yeah.
So I have two questions.
Okay.
One is for two processes. One of approaching women
Yes.
in Ethiopia,
Okay.
and how do you find them? How do you open up the conversation, and how do you convince them to have a conversation with you and get involved into this process?
Yeah.
And then more technical question. We all know that we are working with contact digital
Yes.
negatives, right?
Mhm.
How did you make this amazing?
Big one?
Big one, yeah.
Great questions. Both questions are terrific. Yeah. So the first one is really, it's good that I'm a woman approaching another woman. I think, so maybe I have that in my favor, right? But really, it started out by me just like scrolling through Instagram, and saying, reaching out to like 30 women, and then maybe getting a response from like 10, and then maybe like 2 would say okay or something, or it would really work out. It was like going to a coffee shop and sitting there, and I'm not one to like approach people and say, hey, can I photograph you? But it's like I have this need, and it really all starts with this like burning need to be like, I need to photograph these women. So if I don't really like approach women, then I don't photograph women. So like that, the Instagram.
What does the invitation say?
Oh, the question is really like, hey, I'm ready. I'm an Ethiopian American photographer in media. I didn't even mention that. I'm a photographer. I shoot film. I really love that we can sit in the studio and have a conversation about my work. I can show you my portfolio. I was able to show them work that I've done so they really know that I'm serious. And then I would invite them, we would have coffee. It wasn't really the ask, really. It was like, let's have coffee. And I think that made it easier as opposed to, I need this from you, and I need you, I think it was like, can we have coffee? Let's get to know each other. And it was much easier to do it that way. And it was like truth, and there was just truth to what I was doing. I was like, this is how I shoot, this is how I photograph. It's an ancient way of doing things, so you're gonna have to be really patient. And I want to do this in a span of 5 to 10 years, so I want to know if you're gonna be around, So I just really spoke the truth, and for the ones that really stuck around, you see them up here. It's just really telling them who I am, and asking them, if they want to do this, and the idea is, like 20 years from now, looking back at these images and them themselves looking back at these images, so that's kind of how I thought about it, So for the next question, the digital negatives, I was able to make, the next question I think was, how did you make the digital negatives?
The big ones.
The big ones, but yeah. So I've always wanted to scale big when you make digital negatives. So I could go maybe 11 by 17 on my own. That's as large as I could go. But I really wanted to scale big, and I wanted images that look, enormous. So I met my friend Josh back there at a opening of another friend's exhibit, and he's a printer. He's gotten his MFA in that, and is a master of what he does, and just sort of got to talk to him and say, hey, I'm looking for someone to make me digital negatives that are large. Is this something that we could do? So had that conversation. He's willing to go on the journey with me, and which was really great. We worked really well together because there's a lot of back and forth. So again, with the whole curve thing, with the type of solution that you use. So we started small, making test strips. The test strips are in that basket as artist proofs for anybody interested in purchasing them. And then once the test strips were perfect, we scaled big and made the large digital negative, and then was able to make the prints. We washed them in a kiddie pool with a 10% acid bath. That wasn't fun. Our hands were burning. Yeah, our hands were burning, but I always say if it didn't hurt, you're not doing it right. Like if you almost did, yeah, if it wasn't painful, maybe the job. Yeah. So again, for the love of the art, we sort of, great. Thanks for that.
I think it's so interesting, right? If we look at these photos, they're very beautiful, by the way. The women are beautiful, the way in which you captured them, the lighting. But when you talk about your process, a part of it feels slightly painful. And you have to ask the question, is beauty pain? A little bit for women. Do we often find there being pain, behind the scenes? Is there something that we have to lose, something we have to sacrifice in order to capture beauty? And I think you even choosing to go to Ethiopia, this journey alone and the risk you took. I mean, how many of us can say that we can just walk up to a woman or DM, a woman and go, hey, let's do coffee. And by the way, I'm a photographer. And by the way, here's my portfolio. You should trust me. And we should sit down and share a very trusting story together. How do we do it? And I think it's so, as I'm hearing your story, I was like, yeah, nobody would trust me. Okay. I don't think I'm that trust. And I can trust myself, and I think that's the beauty of you as a photographer, trusting yourself along your evolution, and again, titling it her, and us watching you evolve and trust yourself in the process. if it's okay, what would you say to someone who has never seen your work before? And again, we're kind of slowly wrapping up, and of course, questions as they come, please let me know. But what would you say to someone who does not know your work, who does not understand what they're looking at, and you're looking to educate them? And you mentioned you were not a journalist, and I argue with you that you are in fact a journalist, and you were telling the stories without words. And nowadays we are looking and we accept stories without words. Most of us are not reading like the way we did 20 plus years ago. A lot of things are very visual. So I would say you are a journalist in your own right, but what would you say to someone who has no idea of whom you are, no idea of the stories of women? Do not take the time to come down to Art of Noize, by the way, which is an upshore in Washington, D.C., right? They do not come down here and share coffee with you. And you're saying, I need you to trust this work and trust that I'm telling the stories of women who you may have never met, but I've gotten a chance to meet and they have a story to tell. What do you say to those people?
Yeah, I think that's like the general consensus of like, if you have not seen my work, I would say like come and see my work in real life. I think we live in a digital world where a lot of things are consumed digitally. And it's a different sort of feel when you are looking at something through your phone or through your computer and then seeing it in real life, right? You appreciate a painting better if you went to a museum and actually saw it. So I think I would just invite them. I would say, take a around and just look at it really. And I think you are able to maybe understand. I feel like the longer I've been doing this, the better people are understanding what my work is without me having to say what my work is, right? They're able to appreciate the printing process or the scale or the brush strokes and the stories and connecting with the women really. I have some people that say, oh, that looks like my wife or my sister, or it reminds them of something, and they connect in a deeper way, or they connect with it with a type of printing process, and I'm completely fine with that too. I really try to go there without me having to say a lot, and let them maybe tell me how it speaks to them, right? And try to have a conversation, kind of that comes out of looking at my work. Yeah.
That's good. I was just sorry, Red and I are like, again, when you're talking to your sister, you're like, okay,
Yeah.
that's good. I'll let you go. Breathe. Right. As we close out, there was something very unique about this exhibition I wanted to share. And again, I like to share behind the scenes stuff a lot. Red did a poem. She wrote a piece. And when we first talked about it, she went, this doesn't have to go anywhere in the show. I just want to write this, and I just want you to read it. And I'm working on something, and I don't know. It was all these things, right? I think it was all the feels. And I was like, share it with me.
Can I just add something?
Yeah, please.
English is my third language. And I am not a writer or a journalist, I said that.
Yeah.
But I've been sort of exploring other things aside from my photography in the past, I would say 6 months. Mm-hmm. After the summer, I was really getting into creating art, whether it's through dancing or writing, and even drawing, and I've just really been enjoying that. So I wrote this piece. So I just have to put a disclaimer. But I think it's also a beautiful thing because it really came from my heart and what I was feeling. It was a little raw. My sister was like, "No, it's a little raw."
Sisters are always honest.
Sisters are, yeah. But I enjoyed writing it. It's really sort of what kind of, I think the beauty of what we create as artists is that it comes from deep within us, and it's okay, right, to share it. So, permission to share.
Do you want to share it? I was like, this is the part where you do you want to talk in private? So we have this piece, by the way, and I want Red to read it. I'm not going to read it. No, it's no fun. Make the artist read it. And again, this piece was her inspiration to the show, and I appreciated her for sharing that. She was trying all these different mediums, right? Like, yeah, I'm doing this process, and you guys didn't take my word, but guess what I've been doing? I've been dancing. And I was like, oh, right? And I've been writing, and you're like, oh, okay, all right, you're many things. So I was very proud of her, to say the least, that as an artist, she's taking risks, right? Because as you all heard her say, she said it right here, and it's all recorded, that you like things the hard way. And you like acid on your hands and the process and being in the dark room. Yeah, that's you. Yeah, we get to see the beautiful work at the end, so we appreciate you for that. I'm gonna, if you don't mind, you can talk more, if it's okay, about your vision. Sorry, I'm gonna pull it up. But the last question for Red is, what is her vision for 2024? What does her mean, and how do we carry her out? Not just here in January, we close next week. By the way, if your friends haven't come, we do have a closing next week, January 20th. Let me say that right. You can come during our gallery hours. We're doing a closing event. But I want Red to take a moment while I find this poem, because I'm going to find it. You have a question as well. Okay. You want to jump in for the question before our vision for 2024? Let's do it.
Vision first?
Vision first?
Well, maybe you could add it
It may
in.
add it,
So
right.
you began the story about searching, right? You were
Yeah.
searching for community, for self, for something, right? And so as you have gone along this beautiful journey, what have you learned about yourself in that process?
Good question.
Yeah.
I knew it was coming.
So you can tie it, if you want to talk about vision or whatever. But this is like you said in the beginning, this is more than just, you inviting somebody, let me come to come to my studio, I'm going to take a picture.
Yeah.
You were searching, you were on a journey, and it's not saying that the journey is over, right? That this is a process.
Right.
And so in that process, what have been the discoveries and surprises and delights, the unexpected bits so far?
Wow.
Wow, we're all ready to like.
I know. That's really a beautiful question.
There's also a sister in the back, and I want to make sure we hear her.
100%. Yeah, can I answer this question and then we'll do your question and then we'll do the vision.
Okay.
Tia's question is so I think what I've learned about myself, maybe we can come to that. And I think a lot of it will sort of hear this poem, and I think that has some answers in there. But I have been traveling for maybe 7-8 years. I've been sort of bouncing around and really found myself, my community, in DC. And that's been a really beautiful thing for me, because I, even in Ethiopia, I don't feel at home. It's a hard thing to admit. But I think here I've been looking for this sort of community and a sort of surrounding that nurtures my gift and is able to grow with me and is able to stand with me. And I used to have a hard time describing my work. So what you hear me saying right now, it's not because it's sort of easy or just came out, but I used to have a really hard time because all of it was sort of in my head and not really able to share it. And I had a hard time in Ethiopia trying to really convey what I was trying to do and trying to make sense of it all, because people are like, why don't you do wedding photography? I'm not a wedding photographer, I'm not an editorial photographer, really, I'm not an event photographer, I'm this type of photographer. And I was taking photographs with film, so couldn't show the results then and there. So I was like, can you just trust that my vision, it makes sense? I'm not a crazy woman talking about magical chemistry and potion. I'm gonna go to the States, produce this work, and come up with, but you just have to trust me. So now, when you see all of this is here, it's almost like everything that I've sort of been thinking about for the past decade has come, So I think, I guess what I've learned is that girl, you were right the whole time. Like, you should have trusted yourself and been, you know, just be like, you know, all the things. The road has not been easy at all. I have found it even difficult at times to do what I was trying to do here, you know, but you have to, something I've learned clearly is that, like, you have to let people know, like, let them understand what is your why. Like, why do you do what you do, and what is your ask, right? What are you asking from people? And make that super clear and very straight. And, you know, I try to, I'm very emotional. My emotions are like very up here all the time, especially when I'm passionate about something. And I have to sort of be passionate, but also speak in a very concise way that I let people know what I'm about, what I'm not about being about, and accepting who I am as a photographer. I had to persuade my family members too, you know, that now that they're seeing my success, they're like, oh, this is what you're doing and we love it, you know, we're in total support. So it's like really trusting myself. I should have trusted myself. I've been trying to really let my inner child be like, you're good, you're safe, you're okay. You don't have to like fend for yourself or explain yourself or stomp around. Like, I'm trying to create a safe space for my inner child who wants to dance, who wants to draw, who wants to make an imperfect print, you know, and it's okay. Like, I think the season for me is just to be like, it's okay. Like, we can just breathe and relax and trust that what's yours is going to be yours, you know, and yeah. So I could say a lot, but I think I'm going to stop there and then take the question.
Oh, thank you. You actually touched on answering a big part of my question, but maybe if you can add to it. I wanted to know what the reception has been from the Ethiopian community, both in country and then outside of country, in terms of your overall vision. You touched on what it is now. Like, they see the product, but from reading about your work and seeing it, it's also about capturing the history and the stories. And I want to know if people, how they responded to that or seeing the importance of what you're doing.
Yeah, the response has been positive, and I think all around, really. I think for me, you know, DC has a huge Ethiopian population, Eritrean population, Habeshans. So for me, but I'm also very new to DC, right? So it's like, oh, who are you? You've been here for 5 years, really? So it's really just like introducing myself and being, and introducing people to my process, right? I also want people to understand that my work is best visualized by coming to this space and looking at the work as opposed to Instagram and my website or digitally. So I think that's something that is constantly happening. I think I would like to have more Ethiopian Eritrean participation in my work. But I think we grew up where our immigrant parents were like, go study something that could be sustainable for you, engineer, whatever, all of that stuff, right? So for, like, sometimes Ethiopians are surprised when I'm like, yeah, I'm an artist, I support myself as an artist. I'm an art teacher also, and they're surprised, like, really, do you do it voluntarily? No, I don't. I get paid for it. You know, so I think it's really, and I'm trying to get more Ethiopians and Eritreans into my world, where it's like, and a lot of them, when they find out, really, they share with me that they have also loved drawing and loved photography, but they had to give it up in college or in high school because they needed to go study something serious, right? So this is a constant conversation, and even something I'm looking forward to doing in 2024 is to connect with, East African or African diaspora, really all around. It doesn't even have to matter, and really building a community, I think, is my vision around my work. Like, that's my ask, right? It's like, my ask is, I'm asking people to come. I don't know if I'm young and up and coming. I don't feel young anymore, but I want people to come and look at my work and participate in conversations and communal growth with me, because maybe I don't make, I'm making sense now, but I think in 5 years, like, maybe things will be a little crisper, but I want people to grow with me, right? Grow with my work, and see where my journey takes me. The relationship in Ethiopia is constant because I go there, plan to go there every year. So I am raising funds to go there at the end of the year, which you can imagine it is not cheap, but so this is a constant work for me. It's not stopping for me as an artist to just grow and yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, we are reaching our time. Red will be here after, and I think I want you to take another round. I'll say that way. I want you to look at the work one good last time. If you don't make it next week, but if you don't mind, we're going to close out with the poem. And again, any other questions you have that are burning, in your heart, and your mind, and spirit, she will be around for the next about a half hour or so, hour to and enjoy coffee with her as well. That's how she started. So we would like for her to end that way tonight. But it's okay, I'll have her read the poem because I just think it was so beautiful to her to share, and her anxieties around it, we were both like, yeah, we got this. So I would love for her to close out with a beautiful piece that she wrote, if that's okay.
All right, okay. So maybe like giving finger snaps just so Okay. So the title of this work is What Does Growth Mean to Her? Breathing with intention, alama. Observing, not absorbing. It's stepping back. It's about accepting changes. It's about her transformation as she rises from the ashes. Amen. It's evolving. It's staying calm during a situation that used to make her feel like the ground underneath her was sinking. It's saying, shh, aizosh, while rubbing the back of her inner child who's anxious. Not being surprised by feelings, not being surprised by reactions, not being surprised by what she endured, not taking people's problems. Understanding without being rattled, shaken, surprised, or disappointed by people's behaviors. Unwavering yet in motion, unyielding, hope, tesla, and constant commotion. Moving away from fickle feelings that don't serve her psyche. It's about being impactful. It's about being motivated by rejection. It's about loving in a world that refuses her love. Okay.
You would. My job is done. Thank you so much, Red. Thank you. This was a beautiful exhibition, and I promised you last year that if we were ever get a chance to work again, that I would make sure that your story is told and your evolution will be told. So thank you for inviting her to Art of Noize. Thank you. I'm saying thank you from the women, but we're all screaming and cheering for you as you continue on your journey. I can't wait for you to go back to Ethiopia. I just feel like I'm excited for the next body of work. And I'm excited to see you dance more and see what comes of that. And you write more and you share more with us in your process. Being easy with yourself during your process as you continue to take risks. So thank you so much. And everyone, can we give Red another round of applause? Thank you. Red will be around. She has coffee for you to take part in. And again, the QR codes are on here for yourself. So if you have your cell phones, please do scan where you'll be able to purchase work. As we mentioned, Red's trying to go to Ethiopia, and we need to get her there. And how do we do that is that we purchase and we support her work And this is one way to do it, coming to galleries where she is featured and doing the very thing. So please scan these QR codes. Please look and see. We have artist proofs in the back that we would love for you to kind of take a peek at and enjoy the rest of this exhibition. Thank you for inviting her to us.
Thank you.